Austrian Alps, Lake Toplitz, 1959. Divers descend into the cold, murky water. They are searching for something. Rumors have persisted for years that the Nazis dumped something valuable into this lake during the final days of World War II. Gold, perhaps? Or documents? Evidence of war crimes? The divers find metal chests, rusted, heavy, sealed tight. They bring them to the surface. Crowbars pry them open. And inside, there are millions of British pounds. Soaked, decayed, but still recognizable. 5-pound notes, 10-pound notes, 20-pound notes, all bearing the face of King George VI, all printed with meticulous detail, serial numbers, watermarks, security threads. But these are not real. They are counterfeits, the most perfect counterfeits ever created. So perfect that even the Bank of England struggled to distinguish them from genuine currency, and they were created not by criminals looking to get rich. They were created by the Nazi government as a weapon to destroy the British economy from within. This is Operation Bernhard, the largest counterfeiting operation in history. And it was not a crime of greed. It was an act of war, a financial weapon designed to do what bombs and tanks could not: collapse the British economy by destroying trust in the pound sterling. And the terrifying part is not that the Nazis tried this. The terrifying part is that what they did as a war crime, central banks now do legally. And they call it monetary policy. By the end of this video, you will understand how the Nazis plan to weaponize inflation, why trust is the only thing that gives money value, and why the printing presses running in concentration camps 70 years ago are no different from the digital money creation happening in central banks today, except one was called a war crime, and the other is called quantitative easing. Let me take you back to 1942. World War II is raging. The Luftwaffe has failed to break Britain during the Blitz. The German army is bogged down in the Soviet Union. Hitler's generals are searching for new strategies, new weapons, ways to cripple the Allies without massive military engagements that Germany can no longer sustain. And a man named Bernhard Kruger, an SS officer, proposes an idea, a radical idea. Instead of bombing British factories, bomb the British economy. Instead of destroying infrastructure, destroy the currency. Flood Britain with counterfeit pounds, so many that people lose faith in their money. Inflation spirals, the economy collapses, and Britain surrenders without Germany ever invading. This is not a new concept. Currency debasement has been used as a weapon for centuries, but never on this scale, and never with this level of precision. Kruger understands something fundamental. Money only works because people believe in it. The moment that belief breaks, the system collapses. And the Nazis had recent proof of this. Germany itself had experienced hyperinflation in the early 1920s. The Weimar Republic, drowning in war debt, printed money to pay its obligations. The mark became worthless. A loaf of bread cost billions of marks. Savings evaporated. The middle class was destroyed. People carried money in wheelbarrows, and the trauma of that collapse had fueled the rise of the Nazi Party. The Nazis knew from personal experience that a collapsing currency could destroy a nation faster than any army. And now they wanted to use that knowledge as a weapon. They would give Britain its own Weimar moment, and they would do it with paper and ink. The operation is codenamed Bernhard, after its architect, Bernhard Kruger, and it is assigned to the SS Economic Administration main office. But this is not a project for soldiers. This is a project for artists, for craftsmen, for experts in printing, engraving, and banking. And the Nazis know exactly where to find them. Sachsenhausen concentration camp, northwest of Berlin, a place of horror, of forced labor, of death. But in 1942, a section of the camp is converted into something else. Block 18 and Block 19, the windows are painted over. The barracks are sealed off from the rest of the camp. And inside, the Nazis establish a counterfeiting workshop, the most sophisticated forgery operation in history. The workers are prisoners, Jewish prisoners, selected not for their physical strength, but for their skills. Engravers, printers, bankers, artists, paper specialists, anyone with knowledge of currency production. They are pulled from the general camp population and told they have a choice: work on this project or be sent to the gas chambers. There is no real choice. These men are forced to become counterfeiters, and they are good at it because their lives depend on it. They work in shifts, around the clock, perfecting every detail. The paper, the ink, the watermarks, the serial numbers. Everything must be flawless, because the goal is not just to make fake money. The goal is to make money so perfect that it cannot be detected. The British £5 note is one of the most secure banknotes in the world at this time. It uses custom paper made from linen and cotton rags. It has a watermark, a portrait of Britannia that is embedded into the paper itself during manufacturing. It has intricate engravings, serial numbers that follow complex patterns, security threads woven into the fiber. The Bank of England has spent decades developing these protections. They believe the note is unforgeable. The prisoners at Sachsenhausen prove them wrong. They analyze genuine British pounds smuggled into the camp. They deconstruct every element. They experiment with different paper mixtures until they replicate the exact texture and weight of British currency paper. They hand engrave printing plates so detailed that the lines match the originals under magnification. They develop inks that age the same way as genuine notes. And they succeed. By 1943, the counterfeit pounds being produced at Sachsenhausen are indistinguishable from real ones. Even Bank of England experts, when tested, cannot tell the difference. The Nazis have broken the unbreakable. Production scales up. At peak capacity, the workshop is producing approximately 9 million pounds per month. Over the course of the operation, they print more than 130 million pounds. In today's terms, that is worth billions of dollars. And critically, it represents 15 to 20% of Britain's total currency reserves at the time. This is not a small-scale fraud. This is an attack on the entire monetary system. The plan is to distribute these notes in multiple ways, drop them from planes over Britain, flooding the country with cash, use them to pay German spies operating in Allied territory, launder them through neutral countries like Switzerland, Portugal, and Turkey, exchanging them for gold, foreign currency, and war materials. Every transaction spreads the counterfeit notes deeper into the legitimate economy. And the more counterfeit money circulates, the harder it becomes to contain. But there is a problem. Distribution. Getting the notes into circulation without getting caught is far more difficult than printing them. Swiss banks start noticing irregularities, serial numbers that repeat, notes that are too perfect, too new. Suspicions arise. And the operation, while technically successful, never achieves the economic collapse the Nazis hoped for. And then, in 1945, the war ends. Germany is collapsing. The Soviets are closing in from the east, the Americans and British from the west. The prisoners at Sachsenhausen are evacuated. The printing equipment is dismantled. And the remaining counterfeit notes, millions of pounds, are packed into metal chests and dumped into lakes across Austria. Lake Toplitz, Lake Tronsee. The evidence is hidden, buried beneath the water. The prisoners survive, some of them. After the war, they testify about what they were forced to do. And the world learns about Operation Bernhard, the largest counterfeiting operation in history, a financial weapon that came terrifyingly close to working. But here's the question that should keep you up at night. What the Nazis did was condemned as a war crime, an attack on the integrity of the financial system, an attempt to destroy an economy through currency manipulation. And yet, 70 years later, central banks around the world are doing the exact same thing. Legally, openly, and calling it economic policy. Let me show you the comparison, because this is where the story stops being history and starts being a warning. Operation Bernhard printed 130 million pounds over 4 years. That sounds like a lot. And it was. It represented a significant fraction of Britain's money supply. But compare that to what modern central banks are doing. The Federal Reserve, between 2020 and 2022, created $4.5 trillion, not printed physically, created digitally, added to the money supply with keystrokes. No paper, no ink, just numbers on a screen. $4.5 trillion in 2 years. The Nazis, working around the clock with prisoners in a concentration camp, produced the equivalent of what the Federal Reserve now creates in less than a week. And it is not just the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan. All of them have engaged in massive money creation over the past 15 years. They call it quantitative easing, they call it pandemic stimulus, they call it emergency liquidity provision. But the mechanism is identical to what the Nazis tried to do. Increase the money supply, dilute the value of existing currency, and hope that people do not notice until it is too late. The Nazis wanted to flood Britain with pounds to destroy confidence in the currency. Central banks are flooding their own economies with money and calling it a rescue. But the result is the same. The purchasing power of the currency declines. Inflation rises, savings lose value, and the people holding cash are silently robbed. Here is the critical difference. When the Nazis did it, they were trying to destroy an enemy. When central banks do it, they claim they are trying to save the economy. But ask yourself this. If your enemy printed trillions of units of your currency and flooded your country with it, you would call it an attack. So why, when your own government does it, is it called a rescue? The answer is narrative. The Nazis were the enemy, so their actions were framed as warfare. Central banks are supposedly on your side, so their actions are framed as policy. But the impact on your wealth is identical. Your money loses value, your savings erode, and the people closest to the money printer, the banks, the governments, the wealthy, benefit while everyone else suffers. This is why Operation Bernhard matters. Not because it succeeded. It did not. The war ended before the counterfeit pounds could collapse the British economy. But because it exposed the fundamental truth about money. Money is not valuable because of the paper it is printed on. Money is valuable because people trust it. And the moment that trust is broken, the money becomes worthless. Whether it is broken by enemy counterfeiters or by your own central bank is irrelevant. The outcome is the same. After the war, Britain had to replace its entire currency. Every £5 note, every £10 note, every £20 note, all of them, because the Bank of England could not guarantee which notes were real and which were counterfeit. The trust was broken, and the only way to restore it was to start over. Issue new notes with new designs and destroy the old ones. That is what happens when confidence in money collapses. The entire system has to be rebuilt, and in the process, anyone holding the old currency loses everything. Now ask yourself, what happens when people lose confidence in dollars, in euros, in yen? When central banks have printed so much money that inflation is undeniable? When savings accounts earn zero interest while prices rise 10% per year? When people realize that the currency is being deliberately devalued? What happens then? History tells us. People flee to hard assets, gold, real estate, commodities, anything that cannot be printed. And the currency collapses, just like the Nazis wanted the pound to collapse. Except this time, there is no enemy to blame. This time, the collapse is self-inflicted. The prisoners at Sachsenhausen were forced to counterfeit money under threat of death. The central bankers at the Federal Reserve counterfeit money voluntarily. And they are celebrated for it. They receive awards. They give speeches at conferences. They write books about their genius. But the mechanism is the same. Create money that did not exist. Inject it into the economy. Dilute the value of what everyone else holds. And call it policy. Operation Bernhard was the prototype, the proof of concept. It proved that you can attack an economy with paper, that you can destroy wealth without firing a shot, that trust is the only thing holding the system together, and when that trust breaks, everything collapses. The Nazis failed because they ran out of time, but the lesson they taught has been learned by governments, by central banks, by everyone who controls the money supply. And now, instead of being a war crime, it is official policy, printed in federal budgets, announced in press conferences, executed in real time. The counterfeit pounds are still at the bottom of Lake Toplitz, rotting, worthless. But the idea behind them is alive and well, running on servers at central banks around the world, creating trillions of units of currency that did not exist yesterday, and destroying the value of everything you saved. The Nazis wanted to weaponize inflation. Central banks have perfected it. The only difference is the uniform. Here's what I want you to do. Go to the comments right now. Do you think money printing is an economic policy designed to help people? Or is it a crime against savers disguised as rescue? Write one word. Policy. Or crime. Let me know what you think. And if this video changed how you see central banking and inflation, share it with someone who still thinks quantitative easing is different from counterfeiting.